Hello and welcome. I am Cyril Stober. To say that Nigeria is in the throes of violent criminality is to state the obvious. From the activities of insurgents, terrorists threatening the very existence of the nation, to the rampaging actions of bandits, kidnappers, coupled with various communal clashes with ethnic and religious undertones, security has been of grave concern to citizens. The military, traditionally concerned with protecting the territorial integrity of the country, has had to be deployed to internal operations, which ordinarily should be the business of civil law enforcement. Now, how has the country fared, especially in recent times? Today, I'm with the Coordinator Defense Media Operations, Major General John ENECHE. General, thanks for being with us here.
Thank you very much, Cyril.
Right. Defense Media Operations, that's traditionally not, what we're used to. So this probably is new. Tell us about it.
Yes, in our own setup in the Armed Forces of Nigeria, it is new. First and foremost, you realize that things have changed, as it were. What we have today is not the same thing where we used to have a conventional warfare, conventional operations. People in other climes, like in Asia, America, and others, they have adopted this long ago. So we need to fall in line. How? It is one of the 5 aspects of the Chief of Defense Staff's lines of operation. And media operation being key as it is, he decided that we now have to upgrade and begin to operate in consonance with what is the best practice in the world and what is really necessary for the times that we are in. You discover that, as it were, we are operating the traditional media, which of course you and I know and most people know, which is slightly different from the new concept of what we are doing now. ICT based, whereby information moves very fast. And then information is very, very key. And the management is also very, very essential in every aspect, both for your strategic audience, national audience, and then the troops that you have in the front. First and foremost, churning out the information at the appropriate time as it is happening in the operational theaters, very, very important for the morale boosting of the troops. And at the same time, telling your strategic audience about what you are doing, truths, facts, and figures also help you in maintaining and then enhancing your partnership with them, particularly in the area of acquisition of our platforms and weapons. Of course, you know that we don't really produce what we need. We now get from outside. So when they are convinced that you are actually doing the right thing and then following the conventional practice, all the treaties, Geneva Convention, UN conventions, and then the laws of war, and you are not breaching human rights and amongst others, you easily get what you want. So we needed to begin to operate like that. So we changed. Now, the major difference between media operations that we have now and the traditional is that you work together with the operators in the field, in the planning, execution, and then implementation of all the actions. So at every point in time, the media operations cell or directorate monitors, work with them, and then come out with the true situation. And you analyze it properly such that it will be beneficial to about 3 segments of the target audience. So after this consideration, the defense headquarters came up as far back as September of last year for the directorate to be put together, of which I was tasked to midwife. And then we started, did the training, and then look at other case studies. Went to countries like Pakistan, amongst others. Look at their models, and then we now domesticated what we need that is for us in Nigerian Armed Forces of Nigeria. The process went on, the training of the staff and all, and by 6th of March this year, the directorate was formally established and then given the marching orders. And we started operations on the March 18th of this year. And that is what we have now. Now, another thing is that, secondly, in addition to that, to have the best practice in the world now, secondly, we needed to begin to speak with one voice, such that the services we harmonize, we bring all the information together, what the Army is doing, Navy is doing, the Air Force is doing at the various theaters cut across the country, comes to the cell, to the directorate, to project it to the general public.
All right, that's interesting. Now, the citizens had always known the military as defenders of the territorial integrity of the nation, but times have changed. With the insurgency in the northeast, we now found that in what could be described as peacetime operations of the military became the order of the day. Now, so many have been couched since the insurgency in the northeast, and I would like you to tell us about the operations that are going on, even as things have gradually changed and more, challenges have been brought in here.
Good. The operation that we have in the Northeast, amongst others in the whole country, if I get you right, I will talk about the Northeast and the various that we have.
Yes.
Is Operation Lafia Adule in the Northeast. And we have Operation Hadarin Daji, mainly in the Northwest. In the Northwest, under Operation Hadarin Daji, we have Operation Castina, which came up last month as the result of the emerging, change of what we used to have there that was under Operation Hadarin Daji. But in addition to that, before I go to the other operations, which is also in the Northwest now, we now have Operation Accord, that is coordinating all the operations in the Northwest and then the North Central. Now, in the North Central, we have Operation Safe Haven, and then we have Operation Wild Stroke. In the same North Central, and then cutting across between North Central and then the Northwest, we have Operation Wild Punch, and then Operation Thunder Strike. All these other operations to put together are now Operation Accord. Operation Accord does not directly spread to Operation Lafia Adule, but they have a thin line. Because the Operation Accord that now coordinates, that works, that all these other operations are working under, is to effectively checkmate and block the bandits, other criminals that will be fleeing from the Northwest and then the North Central. So they are working in synergy. And of course, we have achieved in that regard. Other operations in the country, we have Operation Awatse to protect our economic interests. We have Operation Delta Save. Those are in the Northeast. In addition to the Operation Mesa that we have, standby operation. We have Army Headquarters Internal Security Operations in Kogi State, and then we also have other operations that are under these operations. We call them subsidiary operations. Those ones are numerous. So those are the operations that we have now operating in the country.
It means your hands are quite full, to say the least.
Well, it depends on how you look at it. If you look at it externally, you may assess it that way. But it is not that it's not full in the real sense, because I will say that from our own analysis, operational analysis, you should balance it up with what we have on the ground, because we still have reserve. You will say your hands are full when in an emergency you cannot respond now. But as it is, we still have the reserve that we can still respond.
I asked that question because Nigerians would say, what if, well, it's not happening now, but what if the integrity of this country were to be threatened by another nation, with the military deployed in so many other operations? Would it be able to stand the test?
You don't joke with that. As a commander, from the Chief of Defense Staff to the various service chiefs, whatever you are asked to provide to support internal security operations, you cannot touch your reserve for the territorial integrity. No, you don't do that. You always have that. We call it commander's reserve.
All right. Well, at the start of the insurgency, there were those who expressed concerns that this was not a conventional war. You can't take anything really from the Nigerian military when it comes to conventional warfare. They've won accolades everywhere.
Yeah.
But the insurgency was something new at the time it started in this country, and it was felt that the military were not quite prepared at that time for a non-conventional warfare. Did that really affect the fortunes of the country's defense architecture at that time?
Well, let me talk about the aspect of not being fully prepared. What happened that the reaction was not as it is now then was because all the stakeholders, the major stakeholders that were supposed to give us the direction maybe will I say 2013, 2012 then, did not categorize. Let me even start from the Northeast. They did not classify it in the proper way so that it can be tackled appropriately. I don't have the permission to begin to go into specifics. If you had told the armed forces of Nigeria in 2012 or thereabout, or even before that, as when we are talking of 10 years ago, that it is war, it would have been a different ballgame altogether. And whatever nature of war or conflict it is, we would have been able to do what? To adjust. What we should not forget is that the armed forces of Nigeria have the basic training up to the medium cadre training that even these criminals, the so-called insurgents, don't have. To adjust is just like changing the model of a car or modifying an aircraft. Normally, like for instance, aircrafts are produced generally. Then you now give them specifications. Just like the Tucano now, you give them the specifications of what you want. The basics are there. That is how the armed forces of Nigeria is. We have the basics. So if it was defined from the word go, that look, this is insurgency, go out for war, it wouldn't have taken us 3 or 6 months to change our training in mission. We call it in-mission training, just like we have the Nigerian Army Special Forces School in Buniyadi now, and then changing some of our course curriculum and trainings at Jaji, amongst others, and all the services, because that was a major problem, that it seems as if we are not prepared for it. But when it was now defined, for instance, when this present commander-in-chief came and gave the marching orders, it was clear, and we achieved decimation within this predicted time of 1 year.
Right.
So that is the situation. It's the same with the Northeast. In the Northeast, the impression we had, or everybody had, was that these are your brothers, and people were used to being, levied. They call it protection money, until they now begin to renege on their what? On their agreement. So, and now that it is defined, you can see what we are doing in that area. So that was the problem, and as it were.
Interesting. You've used the term now, decimation, and that has been one term that Nigerians have come to know. But tell us, would you, at a point in time, the insurgents were said to have been decimated. That was a new term to most Nigerians. They wondered what decimation. Understandably, quite a number of people imagined that when you talk about decimation, it would mean that you have so incapacitated the insurgents that they would lack the ability to still strike. But over time, we also heard about being technically defeated. What are Nigerians missing here? Because a number of people would still say to you, well, they've been decimated, technically defeated, but every day they're still striking at targets, still carrying out their reign of terror. What are we missing here? What don't we understand about these times?
Yes, what I would like the general public and Nigerians to understand is that they started as insurgents. What is insurgency? They achieved it, as it were. How did they achieve it? They had total control, sovereignty over localities, even up to local governments, 20 or thereabout. Insurgency, it means that you want to carve out a territory for yourself, which they carved out at local government levels. You can imagine. The decimation we meant then, and which was achieved, was that you will now reduce that capacity to occupy territory, hold, generate revenue, and administer. As it were, they had judicial system, they had their courts, they had their law enforcement agents, but that now has been what? They were decimated, and that is still on till eternity. Technical defeat, in the sense that they no longer have what it takes. They were doing patrolling all manner of military activities in their so-called, in quote, territories, as it were. That is what it means. But that did not stop criminality. It is a criminality that we are handling now, which, because it is asymmetric and for several other reasons, appears as if it's a bit difficult. But no, there was a remote issue. People that were, I am experienced to some extent in that area. 21 years ago, I fought in that place. I was a member of the first multinational joint task force as a commander, a major, under General Temlong. And this same thing that you are seeing today is a semblance of what it was then. They called them bandits, as it were. And they were armed up to platoon weapon, area weapon of GPMG. And we did our analysis and we said, no, this thing is beyond the way people are looking at it. Say they are just mere criminals, they are thieves here and there. And it graduated to what we have. And they so worked on the people's psychology that they will not talk. They were paying what they call it security fee protection levy. And we were even warned, we were even advised by the various authorities then, 1998-99, that we should not touch them. You can imagine what the people have been indoctrinated with. So when the insurgency started, they were still under that grip. They don't talk. But now, when the operations, we spiked up our activities. Yeah, the chief of army staff went there for 2 months and all. At the initial stage, at gonorrhea and all, when we attacked, within 6 weeks, we were able to neutralize about 500 of them. Within another short period, all bombardments by the Air Force and land, we neutralized. And the people now, with our constant education, we spread leaflets amongst others that they should not follow these people. They are not offering them good, and they saw it. At a point, they began to dump their families, their dependents, 72, 80, like that. And we recovered all of them to the resettlement centers. And they said, no, that means you now have confidence to give information. Of course, in all fairness, if you see my press releases in the last 24 hours, somehow we don't need to even implicate the people who are protecting them, or the people that give information. And that was what the remote cause of what happened, that they went to wipe out about 81, 40 something, and then they started, come, we are going to pray for you, we are going to preach to you, and they started killing them. We got the information. The remote cause is that you are no longer with us, we are giving out information. But if it were so at the onset that they were volunteering information, credible information, I will tell you that the Northeast is the most difficult to get information, as it were. Until we applied what happens, what is supposed to be, the collaborators began to pick them and all. So that is why you see it like that. But otherwise, the decimation achieved the degradation, technical defeat, yes. Because what they have now is criminality, and a few people, let us not forget about the influx. Some of the people that we have arrested, they are not Nigerians. Yeah. The influx of people, the conflict in Libya, the Sahel region, and because for them it is an industry and it is business.
Speaking about that, having some external support, we also have heard about how the insurgents are seeking collaboration with other terrorist groups across the world.
Yeah.
And Nigerians have also expressed concern about reports of the kind of weaponry that these insurgents have access to. And the wonder, the Nigerian military, is it up to date with the kinds of weapons it needs, the kinds of platforms it needs to fight this?
Yes, I would say yes, because if you talk it for the land and ground operations, they don't have any caliber of weapon that came in. Let me be careful, because we don't produce this weapon here. And from every intelligence we got, and the way we tracked it, is from countries which I don't want to mention specifically, that there were conflicts in Africa. And when it ended, or reduced, they found their way. They began to find their way, because that's a soft landing place for them. We have. Is it the rocket propelled grenade? Is it the rocket launcher? Is it the PKT? We have things slightly above that. Then where we have superiority is the air superiority that we have. That one, I can say that, because even in conventional warfare, without the air cover, without the air superiority, where the ground troops cannot get to because of obstacles and because of delay and speed, the air covers it. So putting all together, what is happening in Katsina now, up to early hours of this morning, our Air Force has been decimating. In short, I will call it scores now. We counted in a camp 135, counted 200. The people that escaped from those camps, what they told us, where Yellow was killed, is scores. So matching weapon for weapon, knowing your enemy, yes, we have that superiority over them, over the enemies.
All right. We'll return to the Northeast shortly, but criminality and other violent acts have spread across the country, to other parts of the country. Big issues, the bandits. And again, the Nigerian military has been called to deploy its resources towards crushing this banditry in many states. Does it worry you that this time it's not the insurgency or the insurgents, but bandits within have sophisticated weapons as well? Some time ago we heard that they used a,
general purpose machine.
yes, a general purpose machine gun.
Yes.
Does that worry you that things like this,
Well,
criminals have access to it?
It is not new. We talk about the proliferation of small arms and light weapons. It has been an issue with the West African sub-region for over 10 years. So Nigeria cannot be isolated. How these criminals get their weapons. So that was one of the reasons. But I also want to refer us back to when amnesty was declared in the Niger Delta for them to lay up their arms, of which they obliged. All manner of small arms were there, right from AK-47, or the one we call personal weapon, general purpose machine gun, a few of rocket-propelled grenades. So that is what is responsible. It is proliferation of the small arms, which is not, the direct responsibility of the armed forces in a way, but we now we curtail it wherever we have the opportunity or the directive, as it were, to carry out internal checks, just like Operation Checkmate and not working with other agencies. But I can say that from all the investigations we have gone and the records we have on our table, it has always been attributed to the porosity of our borders. These people move cross-country. They don't come in across the conventional borders, the gates, where we have the customs, the immigration, and other security agencies manning it. They go cross-country, cross bush paths, and of course, our borders are not fenced. So that is the main reason that you have all these sophisticated weapons in the hand of people that you call common criminals.
All right, and so they're carrying out a reign of terror in some parts of the country: Kaduna, Zamfara, Katsina, Niger. These places have come under attacks by people who, those states don't even understand who these bandits are anymore, what their purpose is. How have you had to carry this war to them? Because so many said, look, we have a military.
As I speak with you, our plans are reviewed on, will I say, hourly basis. Thank God for technology now. Virtual communication, something like the Zoom and all. We can do our review at any time. Now, what we are doing, before I go ahead, I want the public to know that it's not a challenge but a constraint. And it is because the armed forces of Nigeria is a conventional armed force, in quotes. An armed force that is bound by all treaties, agreements entered into by Nigeria on protection of lives and property, on the use of arms, use of mines, which we are not part of it now again. We are not supposed to use mines. So, but the key constraint here, I must let the public know, is collateral damage. That is why you discover that, look at the Northwest now. Just for a stretch of about 1 month, the neutralization, deletion of the armed bandits is far, far more than when you weigh it against the Northwest, the Northeast, when we started. Why? Because these ones are in the forest. When you go, you just clear. Now, looking at why, you see, the other day in, southern Kaduna, Kachia Forest, when we counted, it was 70, but some were still in the forest, and we went there with their vigilantes. The vigilantes and some locals are went in. Are we now, when we now called for the air to engage the forest, of course we cannot take them out all. The same thing with, there is a particular place in Niger State, I think around the Biriningwari, Pandogari, that one about 2 days ago, where we went. But you see people farming the bandits were there. And you know, dropping bombs is an area what? Area shot. It's not a direct shot like the weapon. It have normally a radius of about 200 to 50 meters of effect. That is the major constraint. That if now, you see, we have human beings they use as shield. They know, some of them, they are knowledgeable about it. So in those areas, particularly where you have the banditry now, that is what happens. There we go, we use our BDA, ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance to see. They will report back. You will go and kill 10 bandits. Of course, the life of one Nigerian is what more valuable. And you will know what international community would say against it. All these other people that have put themselves as policemen of the world. So that is one of the constraints. And then as much as possible, we try to see that when the bandits are alone, normally you will see them, then you now strike. So, and we had that challenge also in the Northeast at a time. They will tell us, people will say, they are here, carpet bombing. They used to call it carpet bombing. How do we carpet bomb? Look at what happened in Mongono. When the troops engaged them, initially it was 20 degrees to 41, it would have been more than that. But the United Nations humanitarian camp was there, where they went. If you engage them fully, we had to wait until they withdraw to draw their fire. When we drew them out of that place, that was when the Air Force now engaged. So that is just a constraint to avoid what? Collateral damage that will take off the people that we are trying to protect also.
Some people believe that a large percentage of the bandits we're seeing in all these states now have come from the Northeast and have translated their activities to these other states under the guise of banditry. What are the similarities or differences you see in the fight against the insurgents in the Northeast and these bandits who are, all over the states at this time?
Well, the similarity is in the weapons they use, modus operandi. But there is one difference. That is, they use the same AK-47. In some cases, they use general purpose machine gun from what we capture. The same thing with the den guns and whatever they could find. Short of rocket-propelled grenade. That is the similarity. So it is a possibility that, of course, they move cross-country. They don't pass through the normal checkpoints where we have Operation Iron Gate. All those are subsidiary operations to block them and all. But the difference when they leave the Northeast, or the people that appears to have been in the Northeast and are moving from there, is that the heartlessness, except for a few cases, we will come to that if, the headsmen, the killer headsmen, we call them killer headsmen. The heartlessness that they exhibit in the Northeast is not exhibited elsewhere. In the Northeast, they made it clear from their actions, from what they released, that I am ready to die. I want to die for this cause, for a few of them, for those of them who, But for the bandits, they want to steal and enjoy the money. They don't want to die. That is one. Then two, the heartlessness is that for the terrorists and the insurgents, as it were, they clear everything. Animals they will kill, plants they will kill, human beings they will kill. And if they rob or they steal, they now burn down what they have robbed from. So that is the similarity and the difference. So now there's one line between them, and that is what we are working on. And that can be done because what happens is that when they move, they come and settle in the night. And sometimes from the information that have been provided credibly that we were able to achieve, they will now settle down, and when the people come to farm, then they will now do what? Attack them.
Speaking about information that you receive, one must turn attention to the question of intelligence operations, which are a key component of whatever operations you carried out. How would you rate the kind of intelligence? Because there's those who say, look, where is the military intelligence in preempting these attacks? Tell us about that.
You see, The intelligence cell or intelligence operation more often is not supposed to be solely the job of the military, and as I speak with you, it is not. For this particular aspect, we as the Armed Forces of Nigeria must give credit to the locals. Will I call it specialized locals now? The hunters, the vigilantes. In the Northeast, the Civilian Joint Task Force. Outside the Northeast, the hunters particularly, and the vigilantes. They have been so helpful. When they provide this intelligence, the next level is the state services. The state services now confirm this intelligence for us and turning them into actionable information. And we now process it. That is what we do. So it has been very, very effective. The police also, even the civil defense, we have what we call intelligence fusion cell at all levels of command, at all the theater levels. They sit down, put it together, and confirm it with relative positions. As it is, most times we should be happy for the ICT that probably even the common, we call it common, the hunter wants to guide him on what to do. When he goes to a place, he can give you the position. And they give us that. So that is the way the intelligence works. It is a whole approach, a total approach of the people involved, but not without the hunters, the civilian component, the proper, they have been so helpful.
What has been the relationship with the media? Because now you're, coordinator of defense media operations. What has been the collaboration and coordination with the media? And this time I mean generally, because you do have people who question the fact that the insurgents carry out attacks, the bandits carry out attacks, and they're all over. And by the time information comes to the public from the military, aspersions are cast on the veracity and authenticity of that information. So what is the level of cooperation and coordination with the media?
Yeah, that is why we now have the Directorate of Media Operations. And for one thing the public should know is that we look at the ability of the cell to process this information based on truth, facts, and figures. So that it is not just anything that comes into the cell or goes to the public, because it will put a lot of people in doubt. Of course, we are all aware that nowadays, when you hear a news flash from a scene of an incident, it's something that has happened. It depends on whether it is true or false. With your phone, Android phone, anybody there is happening now. So it is left for us, the state actors, to confirm whether it's true or false. And of course, we made the media to realize that. At the onset of this directorate, is one of the reasons why we have this directorate. The directorate is involved in execution of every operation. They talk to the directorate, talk to me from there. And then we now put it together, we get from our various operations department, from the DIA, from the state service and all. Table it for the media core of the defense headquarters. And what did we do at the onset? We had to call all the defense correspondents and put it on the table for them. This is what we are doing now. There's no gain saying that you are on your own, you are in Nigeria. If the reinforce, it falls on all of us. But what you can be assured of from this directorate and from the armed forces of Nigeria is that we are going to be telling you the truth. Because if we don't tell you the truth, somebody else from there will say what they want to say. And if we don't talk to you, some other people will talk for us. So we now have synergy with them based on integrity, sincerity, and then truth.
There's the aspect of propaganda in war. And the criminals have employed that to maximum effect sometimes. Yeah. How difficult is your task, especially in an era of fake news?
Yes, if I must say that, but not absolutely, that propaganda does not last any longer as it were in years during the time of the First and Second World Wars, and probably something like our civil crisis experience, where there is nothing to corroborate, nothing to use to confirm. But it is not so again. So they use propaganda But again, shortly after that, you discover that even our traditional media, as it were, when Army, Navy, and all their spokesperson will come out with the facts and figures, you discover that what they thought they had said or they had done by way of propaganda to their own advantage becomes what? Debunked. So what we do now is that if you say the truth, you cannot avoid saying the truth now. For instance, if I say we conducted a strike, airstrike somewhere, how? We go further to prove it. If we say we captured, because the area of capturing, a lot of people don't know why it is very important for you to get your enemy alive. Most of them, they operate under drugs. Once the drugs fades, they come back to their senses and tell you the truth. They can guide you in a lot of ways. With that evidence, you have proved to your target audience that you carry out this action. In short, we went beyond that when we got some permissions against showing gory pictures. Nigerians got to the point that if you don't show them the gory pictures as it were, they won't believe. So those are the areas of now countering their propaganda.
Okay, that's a big challenge, and especially when it comes to casualty figures. Do you get frustrated sometimes when all kinds of casualty figures are bandied? If, for instance, I'll give you a typical example. If the criminals say today, oh, we've killed 1,000 troops, okay? Do you get frustrated to see that that kind of claim gets more believed in the public domain than when the military says, look, we have killed 500 of the insurgents?
Yes, they achieve that because, you know, human beings, as it is, they, like in my place, they will say, people welcome more bad news and good news. So you can say it is a challenge, yes, but like I said, it is for us now to convince them otherwise. There was a case in point when they said we lost over 150 soldiers. I had to go down what we call nominal roll, use the list. We were short of publishing it. This is the artillery battalion. It is the artillery squadron. How many people are in a squadron? Counted and then listed the names of the people that we took to the medical center. Those are the measures. It's just like now, how do you now check fake news? We have been saying fake news, fake news, fake news. Government all over the whole world have been against it. It's a challenge to everybody. And the way we are managing it is to ensure that we have the truth. And then keep talking to our target audience, particularly national audience, to just believe they are military. And that is one of the reasons why we now say, look, let us put our voice together under the Directorate of Media Operations. So of course, if the fake news comes, it may be celebrated for a few hours, but as we follow up convincingly, addressed.
In these operations, now this is even asking you to score yourself. In these operations, how would you rate the success of the Nigerian military?
Yes, I will rate the success of Nigerian military at 75%. Why am I saying so? For us, our grading system is different from the normal grading system. Of course, I have never done any work. I've never been to, well, I went to the university in service, but I'm so used to, I've done several courses. So the grading system is that you have done well. If you say 75%, you are above average. I would have said we have done, that is, I would be selfish if I say we are 100%. Because the expectations of the public has not been met.
Right.
The public will want to say, look, we are sleeping with our eyes closed, no single incident or case of criminality again. Of course, that does not apply anywhere in the world. But of course, it's humanly, it's human to expect that. But because we are not yet there, that's why I say we are 75%. And the 75% means that it could have been worse if the insurgents achieved their aim. It could have been worse if the bandits had taken over all over, because they also realized that, look, now you say you gave us amnesty, particularly in Katsina State, you are now collaborating with the government forces to expose us. So we now do what? We transfer the aggression on you. So with that, on all the underlying factors. It has made it difficult for us.
Sometimes it's also difficult to extract information. How do you balance national interest, national security interest against the need for the people to know exactly what you have been doing? That also is a source of friction between military and the civil populace.
Yes, it's because of the level. For me and you, I have been trained. I know what is our national interest. I know what is anti-national security. But the man out there, he does not know what is the national interest. It is left for, it's a whole sectoral approach, a whole approach by the military, operators of government, and all of us to make them to understand what is our national interest and where we want to get to.
There are some controversial issues which we would still like you to talk about here. And one has to do with one of the operations you have in place, Safe Corridor.
Yeah.
How have you responded to the public perception that how do you pick up criminals and get convinced that they have been, they have repented, they have, they are now due for rehabilitation and can be reintegrated to society? Because, not a very good expression I want to use now, the people are crying for blood.
The fact and the true situation of, for instance, if you take a sample of insurgents, if it's possible to pack 1,000 of them, the hardened ones, the deceivers, may just be 10% of that group. That is their so-called leaders in every 1,000. Another 30% are those who voluntarily joined them based on their ideology to pursue their cause. But I tell you, this balance of the 60% are people who were conscripted, people who were kidnapped, people who were captured. Then within that 60%, you have about 20%, half of that 60% of people who didn't even know why they joined at all. But for what? To survive in life. For instance, one said they will give me wife. So wife is what will make you go there. The friend was there. Another one said they will be paying him for those repentant ones. So now, what happens? Secondly, that is why, one of the reasons why the people that are there, some of them in quote, they didn't even know why they joined. And international conventions of which we are part of provides that once somebody say, I surrender, I lay down my arms, I'm not fighting again, you take the person in and treat such a person as your own soldier.
Do we have the capacity to do this with people who have...
Yes, we have, and then it's a whole, a whole approach by international organizations. We have the UN, the UNICEF, we have the International Office for Migration, about 5 other non-governmental organizations with them, and 17 departments, ministries, departments, and agencies of government all put together. You see, the thing is that it is because it's coming through the military. Why? Because we needed, the military is very needful to provide the environment for the procedures, the radicalization, reintegration, and then back into the society. So that is why rehabilitation, yes. Now the aspect of rehabilitation is very key. Where you keep them, like in Gombe now, where they are, who provides the security? And then the first, now one major thing that we do is that, I just analyze the percentages of a sample. Within this sample, now, if they surrender, those that surrender, say, look, I've surrendered like they surrendered, we have them, over 800, put together, we had 208 something, at the first instance, they were 20 integrated. You will still segregate them, we profile them with the intelligence fusion cell into high risk and low risk. The people that are being reintegrated are the low risk. There are some of them that say, I will die, I will not, even if you release me. Those ones are somewhere.
Some people point to the experience, to the point to a similar situation in countries that have far more experience in these matters than Nigeria. And yet it has failed them every once in a while. And they wonder if Nigeria should really go into that, given the fact that people are saying, how do you guarantee that these guys are not going to turn around after being rehabilitated and provide a useful link to their criminal elements out there?
You see, it's a concomitant affair. It's a concomitant affair that we are doing. This is a non-kinetic approach. The kinetic approach is still going on. So all of them are going hand in hand, and these measures are reviewed from time to time. Now and then you now do what we call feedback. The feedback from the first batch that was released was 100% successful. One classical case is one that is in Burma now, who was reintegrated back into the society, having his own barbing saloon. He has been able to empower 4 other indigenes of Burma, married with children. Okay. Even the one in Chad, we did not get the feedback. So, like I said, it's a whole lot of society approach, organizational approach, and work in progress.
Right. You have referred a number of times to international conventions, best practices that the military in Nigeria adheres to. In spite of that, organizations in the world have had so many occasions to either knock the military, talk about rules of engagement, and sometimes cast a dark light on the Nigerian military. I would like you to address that now.
Yes, when you talk about international organizations and then sometimes in quote civil organizations, civil society organizations, who are they working for in the real sense of it? That's the question I keep asking. And when do they normally come up with all these assertions, accusations, and more? If you draw the graph, it is when the activities of the Nigerian Armed Forces, the military, is up, achieving successes, they will now come up. Let's go back to the first instance. Since when did we apply for Tucano aircraft? Because for the capabilities of the Tucano aircraft. Since when did we apply for special artillery guns on wheels? The one we got recently that it was operating in the north before the chief came, long ago, even before this administration or the set of services came on board. And what happened? An incident in Baga, and an organization received human rights and all. When Boko Haram attacked the camp, as it were then, and they were repelled with maximum casualty. Let us not leave the fact. I kept asking a question. These people working, who is paying them? Are they living in shanties? They are living big. Who is paying them? It's not impossible. Have we been able to know who is funding Boko Haram till today? No. With heavy equipment. One day we believe that it must be, So let us not leave that. The moment they start seeing the successes of the armed forces increasing, they will now use that to do what? To discourage our international partners, strategic partners, and then demoralize the troops and then demoralize people. So that is what we believe. It is not real. Otherwise, how do you come and say you took one person out of 2,000 released from investigation camp and you say the person said they tortured him? And that is enough. Is that a proper sample? And you say you did the research. Let me quote one organization correctly. So, in all fairness, they are not being fair. It's like they are double agent. They are working for somebody behind the scene. They are collaborators. There may be collaborators. Let me not be too specific.
There's an old saying that an army marches on its stomach.
Yeah.
That's the one that brings us to the question of troops' welfare and fighting morale.
Yeah. When you talk about the troops' welfare, there is a package that is there. We call it meal ready to eat. We used to call it Campo ration in those days. That is an innovation that is in the armed forces now. In addition to their regular allowances. Of course, some of them will provide regular allowances. They will prefer it because that one is like, this is stipulated in MAFA, Military Manual of Financial Regulations. They are giving. Then another welfare is the kitting. This thing you see me wearing, if you wear it under hard conditions, it does not last for too long. But this I can use for 2 or 3 years. The kitting is done regularly. That is what one of the things, and then the equipment. Once there is equipment casualty, there is always a follow-up, and then replenishment. We have a very good replenishment lines, particularly for the ground forces, the army. We have, at every stage of, we calculate the distance and then the supply route. We call it MSR. So that one is well catered for. For their feeding is standard. Anywhere they have, just like the super camp, they have a full complement of all the service support elements that is supposed to provide everything for them. So that one. And then in the area of boosting their morale, I think in the history of the world, it's rare to see a service chief being in the front, like a chief of army staff, and then talk of even fighting physically. A lot of there are things we don't disclose for security reasons. That is to tell you how it goes. And for being attacked, I know, yes, he's hearing this one, he may say, NNCHE, why are you saying this? I have to say it. When he took over in 2015, the first store he went, he was ambushed and he cleared them. How many ambushes after that? Another one will not let the world know that. So when the troops see that their leadership is from the front, you are identifying with them, their morale is high. It's part of administration. And we even rotate our principal staff officers to visit them to encourage them. That also the Air Force does, the Navy does.
How about the tour of duty? Those who become war weary. How good is the rotation?
We have a rotation plan. Incidentally, there is a standard, but it is reviewed from time to time, and it is based on exigency. Of course, before a soldier or an officer gets wearied in the battle, you rotate them. There is a standard. The United Nations standard is not applicable to a conventional war situation or an asymmetric situation. So most times we have a standard of rotating them, routinely. But it is determined by the situation on the ground. There is no person that should stay there for life.
In all these situations, some, unfortunately, would have to pay the supreme sacrifice, the supreme price.
Yeah.
What happens to their families?
Well, their families, there's what we call the benevolence arrangement. It takes care of them immediately. The benevolence, of course, once it happens and then they are identified. That is why we don't disclose their identities over the air. There are designated officers from our admin departments that we go to the family and then break the news to them, particularly the next of kin. Commiserate with them and then provide the immediate relief, what we call benevolence. And of course, for the standard, particularly in a war zone, the remains are supposed to be buried in the war zone. They are not supposed to be brought back.
For those who are demobilized and who have suffered their own form of trauma, injury or the other, what is the arrangement for post-trauma care?
Yes, we have that arrangement at the Nigerian Army Reference Hospital in Kaduna. In short, all the military hospitals. But as I speak with you, not to move too far so that they can be handled almost immediately, the Army is constructing a reference hospital in Maiduguri. And then there is another facility in Bauchi that the Air Force constructed also. So those two packages are to handle that, for PST.
General, before we go, we really have to ask you this. Public opinion, most of the time, may not necessarily be correct. But people wonder, will there really come a time when Nigerians would wake up and it would be like the old times and say there's not a single incident of insurgency, a single incident of terrorism, a single incident of banditry? Is that possible? Is that, many people look and say, oh, why haven't our soldiers just finished all of them and so we can all be in peace?
Yes, it is a relative thing. Why do I say it's a relative thing? Because the fact of life is that there is nowhere you have a straight line. It is we that have created a straight line. There is nowhere you have a 12 that there will not be a Judas. And the Judas are the criminals. But there is a time that when you are sleeping, you know you have a watchman. And the watchman is working and the watchman will not cry and say, landlord, come out. That time is coming. Yes, Nigerian can be assured of that. What we are seeing now, like I always make that reference, when you bust an ant hill to clear it, to put the chemicals inside, you see the ants will see run out. But this time around, the ants are not going to run too far away because the armed forces of Nigeria have planned, and just like Operation Accord now, to begin to nip them. I want to assure Nigerians that the government is on top of the situation by providing all our requests so that we can be far ahead of the common enemies of this country. And by the time all those ones come, it will look as if, like the Bible says, it's history.
All right.
It's going to be that.
Well, we'll have to leave this conversation here and hope that you'll come again some other time.
Thank you very much, Cyril.
Major General John ENECHE, Coordinator, Defense Media Operations, we thank you for coming on One on One.
Thank you, Cyril.
Thank you. Right. And that's our program today. Thank you for watching. Next week we'll be back with One on One. I am Cyril Stober. Bye for now.